Welcome to First Page Fridays. I'm April Davila with Sit Right Here, and today we're going to look at somebody's first page. These are sent in anonymously by you, the viewers, so if you would like to send in your first page, check out the link below in the show notes. You can do that. I haven't read it yet. I assume it's the first page of a novel or a short story, but we're going to read it through and then we'll come back up to the top and I will share my thoughts in terms of how I would go about editing that page. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get to it. I'll shrink myself down. Don't forget to like and subscribe so that these videos come up and you can continue to learn as a writer and a reader. Let's go ahead and get to it. And again, I always like to put a little disclaimer out there that I haven't read this yet, so if I stumble a little bit on names or whatever, just be patient with me, please. James Blockman, 2009. Icy wind pelted his body with snow, the frozen ground underneath him hard and unforgiving. The base impulse to shiver and stay warm fundamentally broken. Fear had him in a stranglehold, but loosened its grip little by little as time dragged on, his eyes growing heavy with terminal fatigue. A short rest before hiking out of the woods sounded like a good idea. He lay there for a long time. The forest, usually full of the whispers of rustling leaves and curious critters, held its breath. A tug on his shoulder sent raw, sharp pain through his temple, and warmth trickled over his forehead down his cheek. The forlorn gray sky filled his vision. An instant before a pale face floated above him. Hope blossomed. Maybe everything would be okay. Hot tears fell from the eyes above and splashed onto his face, his own body ignoring the natural urge to cry. He wanted to say, "It's okay, I understand. It's not your fault," but his mouth wouldn't open. The night grew darker, and the snow came down in vast, frenzied flurries. He needed to get home. His dad would start to worry with dinner growing cold at the table. Blackness fizzled at the edges of his vision, but he held the gaze of the eyes above. He'd done the right thing, hadn't he? All he'd wanted was the truth, but now, more importantly, he had to tell someone what he'd found out before history repeated itself. All right. Right off the bat, I really like the specificity of this, the way that it's anchored in one scene. And I love that it ends with that kick of he had to tell someone what he'd found out before history repeated itself. Bam! Yeah, that's a great way to end a first page. I mean, presumably it's not the end. Presumably it like keeps going. But like if I got to the bottom of a first page and read that line, I would definitely turn the page and see what happened next. All right, let's come back up to the top. James Blockman, 2009. So because we have a character who's kind of alone, we're going to talk a little bit more about that. I do kind of like this. Sometimes it feels like a cheat, but I actually feel like this is a helpful, I'm assuming that our protagonist here is James Blockman. It's 2009. So that's all good. Icy wind pelted his body with snow, the frozen ground underneath him hard and unforgiving. I would love, okay, so underneath it, the frozen ground underneath him. So this tells me he's sitting, presumably, okay. The base impulse to shiver and stay warm, fundamentally broken. Okay, so we've got a semicolon here. This is kind of like the idea of semicolons is it's two sentences that are so closely related that you kind of want to think of them as one thought. I always struggle a little with semicolons, but let's read it again. Icy wind pelted his body with snow, the frozen ground underneath him hard and unforgiving, the base impulse to shiver and stay warm fundamentally broken. I want, part of me okay, and a lot of my feedback is going to come down to like personal preference, right? So if it were me, I would probably make this two sentences, like the icy wind pelted his body with snow, the frozen ground, and maybe even three, period. The frozen ground underneath him was hard and unforgiving, period. The base impulse to shiver and stay warm had fundamentally broken. I feel like we need a was or a had here, but again, this is a style thing. So I'm going to resist the urge to like jump in and start putting my style into it, because I think ultimately like it does what it's intending to do, which is to impart, like, what the main thing I'm taking away from this is that he is very, very cold. He has passed through shivering back into that part where you're freezing to death, because from everything I understand that when you stop shivering, that's when you're really in trouble. So this bit here, we know he's out in the snow, he's on the ground, either laying or sitting. There's some opportunity for some specificity here, like Did he just sit down in the middle of like a frozen lake? Is he under a tree? I mean, there's a little room for some specificity in there. We do get that he's in a forest, but like, is he sitting in the middle of a clearing? I don't know. I think if it were me, I might put like icy wind pelted his body with snow, or maybe like if you could get in, like, is he leaning against a tree? So if he's being pelted, I'm going to assume he has no shelter. So I'm picturing him just kind of like sitting in a clearing, right? The frozen ground underneath him, hard and unforgiving. The base impulse to shiver and stay warm had been, I don't know, fundamentally broken. That's a style thing. We know he's in a bad place. Things are not good. He's alone and he is too cold. Fear had him in a stranglehold. Now, one of the things I understand about freezing to death is that it actually, like, there's actually a calmness to it, that it's when you're shivering and sweat, like when your body's still fighting to stay warm, is when you tend to feel the fear. From what I understand is that, like, by the time you stop shivering, the fear starts to fade, and you kind of just, then you have this, what I've heard in terms of reports is that people will say like, oh, I just got tired, right? And people who've been revived after like freezing to death and so a short rest before hiking out of the woods sounded like a good idea. In my mind, I'm like, no, don't give in to the like, that's death, right? That impulse for a short rest is death coming, because you're no longer shivering, you are on death's door, and a short little rest seems like a good idea, but that's how you die. And so this fear part doesn't quite jive for me. You might say fear had loosened its grip little by little as time dragged on. His eyes growing heavy with terminal fatigue. That actually rings more true to what I have read in terms of accounts of freezing to death. So I would just trim that little bit. He lay there for a long time. Okay, we want to come in on the moment of, like, this moment of icy wind pelting his body. So you could say he had he'd been there for a long time. But like, that's really, we already know, like, he wouldn't be freezing to death if he hadn't been out there for too long. So I feel like you could trim that. The forest, usually full of whispers of rustling leaves and curious critters, held its breath. Okay, I like this. We know he's in a forest. That sense of quiet that comes with thick snow, I think, is there. This idea of holding one's breath. I mean, this all feels very ominous to me. A tug on his shoulder sent raw, sharp pain through his temple, and warm trickled over his forehead, down his cheek. I'm not quite understanding what that is yet, but I'm willing to roll with it, because from everything that's coming before, I'm getting the sense that I'm in someone who kind of knows what they're doing. I'm willing to, like, be on this journey with you, but I would hope for some explanation fairly soon on what tugged on the shoulder. How does a tug on the shoulder make the temple bleed? Like, there's some questions you're posing here. That's okay. The forlorn gray sky filled his vision an instant before. So now we're kind of back to the sky. So I would say I might not come back to the sky. I might just say a pale face floated above him. Because we've set the tone, right? We're like, okay, he's really cold. Then we describe the forest for a moment. If you're going to continue to describe the environment, I might do it here. I'm like, the forlorn gray sky. This, like, you could put that sentence here. The sky above was forlorn, or hung gray and forlorn. Yeah, gray. Depends on if you're British or English, right? Forlorn. Okay, so yeah, get the descriptions together, kind of like group them, and then something happens. This tug on his shoulder. A pale face floated above him. Hope blossomed. Maybe everything would be okay. Hot tears fell from the eyes. So I think you've created a character who's really in a state of, like, near death, right? So if hope blossoms, let it be just like a little blossom. And I think even just like the face is enough of, like, I would almost not jump back into his head just yet. A pale face floated above him. Hot tears fell from their eyes and splashed on. So now the question is the eyes. So eyes generally always exception. There are always exceptions, right? But generally when we talk about eyes as removed from a face, it feels a little weird. So like the eyes above, like those eyes are in a face, and the pale, we know it's a pale face floated above him. Would it ruin the story if you told us, is it a male face, a female face? Is it a young face, an old face? Like, can you give us, hot tears fell from, I just want like a hint here of like a pale face floated above him. Like the round cheeks of a child, or the friendly wrinkles of an elderly person. I don't like, again, I don't know what you're envisioning here, so I can't quite do it, but like the hot tears fell from the eyes. Now, again, how do we know they're hot? And also, if it's that cold, are they still hot by the time they splash onto his face? It probably doesn't matter, but the point is that it's raising questions in my mind as a reader. So tears, I'm going to keep it fairly, I'm not going to make a lot of decisions for you in this because I don't know the specifics, but I would, tears rolled down their face. Down their face. Now, does this person say anything? He felt his own body ignoring the natural urge to cry. Now, I don't know what that feels like. I was going to say tears rolled down their face. He felt his own body ignoring the natural urge to cry. I'm not sure what that feels like. To feel your body ignore a feeling. I wonder if you can be more specific. So the way I would interpret that is like he felt the urge to cry himself, but no tears came, right? Because he's too cold for that. Like his bodily functions have shut down. He felt the urge to cry himself, but no tears came. Because otherwise you have like a feeling of ignoring a feeling. It's kind of circular, and I like as a reader, I'm not sure what that, like, I'm not like when I read like he felt the urge to cry but no tears came, that I can like feel, I recognize that. I don't really like know how to embody this like feeling and ignoring of a feeling. Yeah, anyway, he wanted to say, it's okay, I understand, it's not your fault, but his mouth wouldn't open. I like that. And I like that it's in italics because like the words aren't actually coming out of his mouth. He wanted to say it. Now, the fact that he's saying, it's okay, I understand, this makes me feel like he knows this face. Because otherwise, why is his instinct like, it's not your fault, right? To even have that instinct implies that they know who this face is, in which case, don't hold out on us. Like, tell us who the face is. And instead of letting it be a mystery, like if your character knows, let the reader know. If the character doesn't know, then this response seems a little off, because like, I'm just imagining like if I'm laying there freezing to death, like I'm really like right on the edge of death, I'm settling into it, and this face appears above me, the thought would be like, help me, like for God's sake, like give me some hot chocolate or something, right? The instinct to be like, it's okay, I understand, that implies backstory. So, and if there's backstory, that means they recognize this person. So don't hold this in suspense. Tell us who it is. If they don't know who it is, then I wonder if this is actually the response that they would have. Again, this your story. You have to decide which way that goes. The night grew darker. So now I'm a little confused on like the passing of time here. Unless this is imagining, unless they're imagining. So the way I'm reading this, the night grew darker, because he has this very specific moment of like freezing to death, pale face floats above them with tears in their eyes. And he says, he wants to say, it's okay, but the words won't come. And then the night grows darker. So, okay, I guess he was imagining that person, because they're presumably not just standing over him for hours while the night grows darker, watching him freeze to death, right? So I'm going to read that as hallucination. The night grew darker and the snow came down in vast frenzied flurries. He needed to get home. Okay, so this, This actually feels like it would come before the settling into the short rest. And actually, it might be interesting to move this up. Like if you put it here, and again, I'm just going to jump in and play around with this. I always say it's your story. You got to do what works for you. But just an idea here. Like I might put this here. So I see when pelted his body with snow, the frozen, again, I'd love to know if he's sitting, laying against a tree in the middle of a lake, whatever. The frozen ground underneath him hard and unforgiving, the base impulse to shiver and stay warm fundamentally broken. The night grew darker and the snow came down in vast, frenzied flurries. He needed to get home. His dad would start to worry with dinner growing cold at the dinner table. Now, I do like this. I like that you get this detail in that, like, there is someone waiting for him. It's his dad, which implies that this is like a younger protagonist. Maybe. I mean, he's young enough to have a dad who's waiting for him, right? He could be an adult. He could also be a teenager. Like, the point is somebody's waiting for him. Blackness fizzled at the edge of his vision, but he held the gaze of the eyes above. Oh, okay. So now we're back to the eyes. So I would come back to here. I would take this. Okay. His dad was dinner growing cold at the table. He'd done the right thing, hadn't he? All he'd wanted was the truth. But now, more importantly, he had to tell someone what he'd found out before history repeated itself. And then you could say something like, but he was too cold to get up. Fear had loosened its grip little by little. See, I don't think you can do the fear had loosened its grip a little by little if you have this urgency here. And the urgency is good. It's important. So I guess you could start with him losing the fear. And then when the face comes, here, let's just go back to this, because it's a little confusing. The night grew darker, had all he wanted, but now, more importantly, okay, wait, no, it was here. Blackness fizzled at the edge of his vision, but he held the gaze of the eyes above. Yeah, I'm just confused. If it's a hallucination, I think you need to clue us into that. Like maybe when he sees it, he says it's okay. His mouth wouldn't open. He blinks, trying to let his eyes water. And when he opens them, that person isn't there anymore. The night grows darker. Snow comes in vast. Dad would be worried. But again, I still feel like he's past the point of worrying here, because something is fundamentally broken in him. He is settling in. He is in the last moments before death. It's kind of too late to then be like, oh, but now I'm worried about dad. Unless this face, like maybe this is mom's face, right? And maybe this vision of this person is what spurs him to be like, have to get home to get, like, have to rally. I gotta rally. And I think that actually could work really well. But this line of like the night grew darker and the snow came down and like, and they're still just holding the gaze of the eyes above. It's got to be hallucination. But I'm a little confused. And I think that's the point here. In general, I think this is a good first page. Like I said, I would absolutely turn the page and keep reading, but I think there's opportunity for some specificity of like, where exactly is he? And then clearing up whose pale face is it? If he doesn't know, that's okay. If it's a stranger, but like, let us know that. And then let us understand, I would take away this part. He needed to get home. Like, let this face inspire this next thought. Like maybe the face, the person says something to, even if it's a hallucination of like, your dad's waiting for you, right? Maybe it's mom's face, your dad's waiting for you. And then he has the thought, I got to get home. I got to rally. Dad's going to be waiting for me. I have to tell someone what happened so history doesn't repeat itself. It just feels like there's a little something missing in here. But once you flesh that out a little bit, this is an absolutely intriguing. It kind of reminds me of Jack London. Well, pretty much any of his short stories, but particularly To Build a Fire. If you haven't read that short story, you definitely should. Intriguing, interesting, needs a little bit of specificity here in terms of the turnaround from freezing to death to gotta get home. But other than that, I think we're good here. I'm going to leave it at that. And I'm going to invite anyone else who is writing, if this is not your piece and you would like me to do a pass at your first page, to check out the link below in the show notes and submit your page. And maybe next time we'll get a chance to look at yours. Cheers. Happy writing, everyone.